Time to light it up.
Normally, what we do is review movies for Box Office Maniacs or TV shows or DVDs, but this is a special occasion that we are coming on here and we're doing a 4-part review of the brand new Netflix movie called The Toys That Made Us.
Well, it's not a movie, it's a series.
Documentary.
Okay, well, series though.
You know, there's going to be 8 episodes, and hopefully there's going to be more than 8 episodes, but I know right now they're planning just for 8 episodes. And the first episode here of The Toys That Made Us is Star Wars.
One of the all-time biggest toy lines ever. Star Wars. The one that changed toy lines and toys forever as well.
Now, what this is like we said, it's a documentary, and it basically goes back to the very beginning on how this toy line started and tells you how it was created and who created it. It has all the interviews with all the sculptors and the artists and the people who actually created this toy line. And this is something that I've been hoping that they would do on television for such a long time, because all these toy lines have such an amazing history. And I mean, I really didn't know much about the Star Wars toy line watching this, going into this, except there was a toy line.
Well, I knew a little bit more about it. I mean, I knew of Kenner. I never knew its beginnings or anything like that. And of course, I knew of Kenner because of Star Wars and because of the original Star Wars action figures. But I knew somewhat of what the merchandise as a whole, all of, not just the action figures and the play sets and whatnot for Star Wars, but all of the Star Wars toy lines were doing for the movies. I knew that aspect of it. But as far as the creators and who designed it and who came up with Kenner and all of that, no, I had no clue.
The thing about this documentary is, and I'll probably say this in all the reviews, is they sit there and they interview, you know, these people who made this toy line, and it seemed like they loved their job. I don't think there was a single interview out of any of these 4-part documentaries here where they're sitting there interviewing the people who were involved with the toy line who just did not absolutely love what they were doing.
There was this one key person in this that they keep referring back to, and I believe his last name is Sweeten. And Sweeten went there to, they actually invited him to the set, so to speak, of Star Wars, and it showed him what they have came up with, what Lucasfilm had come up with the Millennium Falcon is the first thing he sees. Is the Millennium Falcon.
I mean, how awesome would that have been, Vince, just to walk on the set and see it? But again, this guy, I mean, obviously didn't know anything about the movie, knew nothing about really what he was looking at.
When Star Wars started out, they introduced it at Comic-Con. And nobody knew what it was. Nobody had any clue. They just said, this is a new independent film from an independent filmmaker, and it's called Star Wars. But it became a big buzz there at Comic-Con. And that's where all of this sprung from. So when they did this, all they had was like shirts. So they wanted to do more merchandising for Star Wars, and I guess that's where all this starts to happen, what you see in this documentary.
It's phenomenal on how much money they made off these figures, and Lucas lost probably billions and billions of dollars on the merchandising because of the deal they made. So they sent, the lawyer went in there to negotiate with, I guess, Lucas, or Lucasfilm, or whatever it was, and he sent in a bodybuilder, and he said he's sitting there flexing and stuff. It's like, you're going to renegotiate this contract. And he's like, no.
The lawyer was tough, though. He was a tough cookie. He didn't back down to this guy.
But it's interesting to see that was how they were going to conduct business back then.
Like I said, I knew a little bit about Kenner, but I didn't know everything about it. I thought it was already an established toy company. I didn't know that basically I guess they made a few things, but they didn't have anything major. They didn't have Star Wars was their major thing, but before that, nothing.
When I was growing up, the one thing, I don't remember the figures taking a year to come out. Of course, I was, little back then. But the very first action figure I ever owned, Vince, ever in my entire life, and I bought it from Star Wars, was C-3PO. That was the very first action figure I ever owned. And I don't remember, because they talk, and I remember the cardboard thing they came out with where they showed all the characters promising Star Wars figures, but it was over a year since the movie came out, and then they released the Star Wars figures, and I don't remember it being that long.
I do remember seeing the cardboard thing, but I didn't, I was little. I was 6 years old when Star Wars came out, and I had no idea what any of that was. And I know for a fact that my parents didn't know anything about it, so of course I didn't get anything like that. But in 1978, when they finally did release the Star Wars figures, I do remember seeing the holiday special, which introduced them. First one that I got, my very first, well, I should say the first two, because me and my brother both got one each. And we played with it. We played with them either one. We didn't really say, well, this is yours and this is mine. We got Darth Vader and we got Obi-Wan Kenobi. Those were the first two Star Wars figures we ever got. Later for Christmas, we got the X-Wing fighter, the TIE fighter, and I believe Luke and Leia or something like that.
And I was always jealous of your TIE fighter. I always wanted that TIE fighter. Never got it, but I did get the X-Wing. I did have the crazy X-Wing. And I think they said when they were making that stuff, they hadn't really seen the movie, or they were, because the X-Wing, it looked like the X-Wing, but there was stuff about it that wasn't the X-Wing. Like I remember there was a red, we had to push a button or something, and a little red dot came up or lit up in the front of it. It goes beep, beep. Remember that?
Yeah, that was to do the electronic sounds of the laser beams or whatever. You could press the button on it and it would make, I guess that's what it was for. That's what I used it for, was hit the little button if I was, shooting down a TIE fighter.
And like I was saying, the first action figure I ever got was that C-3PO. And the earliest memory I ever have, I've never said this to anybody, this is something I've never told anybody, it's nothing big, but I remember walking down the alleyway when I was a kid, playing with C-3PO on top of the dumpsters. And I was just sitting there on the dumpsters playing with C-3PO thinking, oh my god, this is the greatest thing ever. I got a figure from the movie. And then the other thing I remember about him is that all of his gold rubbed off within a day. He was gold, then he became silver because all the gold just rubbed off of him.
Like I said, our first figures were Darth Vader and Obi-Wan Kenobi. And then later on, we've got, the TIE fighter and the X-Wing, and eventually, yeah, we every time we went to the store, I was like, Mom, can I get another Star Wars figure? Can I get another Star Wars figure? Because I'd come across all these other figures that I wanted. Eventually, I got Luke and Leia and Han and R2 and the whole cast,
The best thing, one of the best things about this, if you're old, like me and Vince are, is when they show the original Luke and they show the original, Darth Vader with the plastic cape and the push-out lightsaber. We had all those. I don't have them anymore. You might have them, but they're worth a small fortune, those little push-out lightsabers, because I know later on they went to the ones that just fit in their hand. And I never understood they have a real thick lightsaber and a little tiny stem sticking out of it. That was kind of stupid. I still didn't I think when I was a kid I just ripped the stem off because I thought it was dumb. But yeah, all that stuff is worth a fortune now, and I'm sitting there going, oh my god, what happened to all of them,
I still have the figures. I still have Darth Vader. I still have Luke Skywalker. I still have Ben Kenobi. I don't have all the actual lightsabers. I think I have maybe one or two of those. The one toy that I wanted so much and for so long, and we actually talked about all this on our Blu-ray review of Star Wars on Box Office Maniacs. And you mentioned that about playing with 3PO on the dumpster. But for me, one of the biggest toys that I wanted from Star Wars, there was two big ones that I really wanted from Star Wars. One of the biggest ones, though, I finally got, and I got it in the worst way, was the Millennium Falcon. and it was given to me for Christmas by my grandmother, who was at that moment in a coma because she had had her stroke. But that was something that she told my mom, I want him to have that for Christmas. And so she went out and bought it, but unfortunately my grandma didn't live long enough to actually see me play with it or anything.
When we do the review for the toys that made us, we're going to do a review for some of the classic Star Wars figures. I own 2 of them. Vince owns like however many he owns. So right after this review, we're going to put up another review to look at the classic Star Wars figures. The 2, I think I still own Chewbacca. He's somewhere, but I don't know where. But I know where the other 2 are, and I'm going to review those for you right after this.
It might take me a while to get everything together and actually film it all.
So overall, I would give the first episode of The Toys That Made Us a 5 out of 5. Really enjoyed it. Very entertaining. Learned a lot of stuff, actually. And again, I mean, obviously these shows are supposed to be a blast from the past to get you excited for seeing the old stuff again. And it did. I thought they did a great job with this.
And I would totally agree with all of that. I loved this show. I thought they did a fantastic job on it. The only thing I wonder about, this is the one thing I questioned in the show, is because especially at the very end, they put up across the screen that George Lucas declined to do any interviews for the film, for this show. And it made me wonder why he declined it in a way. But the other thing I was kind of questioning is because if you watch the documentaries, they've always said in every Star Wars documentary that he used the money that he made from all the action figures and all the merchandise to actually pay for Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. So it always made me wonder about that contract, seeing it in here. Seeing that he lost all this money, supposedly, on this contract, and how long it took him to actually work out a contract with George Lucas, and I wonder if it's just the details of that is why he didn't do an interview. I don't know, but it makes me wonder what was left out of it. Why wouldn't he do that? And it also makes me wonder about the actual, where does that actually fit in? Where does this actually fit into the movies if he used the money to make the other films? This show made me question it a little bit. But as far as the show is concerned, I loved it, and I give it a 5 out of 5 as well.
So there you go. This is, like I said, something brand new here for It Figures. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. And up next is our look at the classics, the original Star Wars figures. However many we have, we're going to show it to you. So hopefully you come back and tune in for that. And we still have 3 more of these to bring you.
And also subscribe to the channel. Keep subscribing and and leave us feedback and hit the little bell up there because you'll get notified when we post all this stuff.